You that what we said earlier about agriculture and what the political parties hope to tell us and how they hope to improve farmers and protect them from terrorists to prevent famine is one of our conversations today. Secretary of Agriculture and Commodities Directorate of APC Presidential Campaign Council Redson Tedeke and member of the Strategic Communication Department of PDP Presidential Campaign Council Debbie Magnet will be our guests. They're already sitting back.
They're already here. Okay, thank you, gentleman and lady. Let's begin with the gentleman. Even though it is said that oil is the mainstay of Nigeria's economy, we do know that agriculture has and still remains the foundation of development and Nigerian economy. Why do I say this? Because before you can say the economy has gotten to a certain point, at least you should be able to eat to start with. And Nigerian women farmers, particularly the smallholder farmers, are said to be the ones feeding the nation. So, but there are issues now. We have unemployment, we have other problems in the country, which makes it look as if, you know, agriculture has not gotten us to where we should be. What are the issues?
Good morning, and thank you for having me. Yes, there are issues. Progress has been made, but there are issues, no doubt. I've often said that our approach to agriculture needs to change from what it is right now to what it needs to be for the country to become more productive. And what am I saying? The smallholder farmers, rural Nigeria is driving the Nigerian economy really, not just in the agricultural sector. But what needs to change or what needs to be made better is access to basic infrastructure. It's not just access to basic infrastructure, but access to cheap funds. You know, when the West tell us that government has no business in business, that is one of the biggest deceptions of our time. I often use the example of the American farmer and the massive subsidy and support they get. Funding in the agricultural space is too commercialized for it to become progressive. You don't treat agricultural funding the way you treat the funding in every other sector. And so one of the biggest mistakes the CBN has made, and which is one of the things that's going to be corrected, is driving the funding of agriculture from the commercial structure into government agency and institutional structures that support redevelopment and productivity, and is done over the long haul rather than making it a turnover business. That is number one. Then number two, I often say that when governors build insane infrastructure that are very expensive, they're actually working against the interest of their own people. If you go to rural Nigeria, and most of these countries in rural areas, you realize that what the people actually need are access road, basic access road, not this high cost road, but basic laterite road. Texas is one of the largest food producing states in the United States. I visited several farm communities, hundreds of thousands of hectares, and guess what? Most of them were simple laterite road because access to market is very strategic to the rural farmer. Now people keep talking about smart farming and all of this, and I've often said the Chinese revolution, the Chinese economic revolution that was literally looked at as crazy all over the world and not very interesting, was primarily based on a cultural rural revolution, economic revolution, that drove every one of the Chinese people into agriculture and into reproductivity. Because the thing about agriculture is that once you are able to mobilize your people into the field, what you do is you're actually mobilizing your resources into the field and mobilizing reproductivity with regards to engineering, with regards to every sector of the economy. And so what needs to change? A lot has been done, yes, but what needs to change is now real rural integration, rural development, easy access to fund, and then that we re-energize the rural economy. Because I often say that Nigeria is a virgin country when it comes to reproductivity and agricultural development. And I'll close by saying that if Brazil is doing well over $10 billion a year in beef production, and Australia is doing over $50 billion, about $70 billion every year from just the animal husbandry industry, particularly the cattle industry, and Netherlands is doing about $100 billion every year.
Okay.
We therefore must look at agriculture as a more significant component of the Nigerian economy than oil, than any other sector. And so, yes, there are challenges, there are progress, but more needs to be done.
Okay, let me come to you, Debbie, because he's given us quite a rundown of what the inroads, interventions, and technical support system should be like. But let's look at the fact that in 2023, there has been a report, I mean nationwide, that there will be food scarcity looming. Already we see that if you have an extreme poor population meeting food scarcity, you can best be able to guess what the outcome will be. But, you know, it's multifactorial. Looking at a period where climate change took a spike, there was flooding, and then you see insecurity where a lot of the farmers have been dislodged from their farmlands and can no longer farm. So tell us exactly what, you know, your candidate, your party will be doing differently with agriculture.
Okay, thank you. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. So you asked me about the flooding and the famine that is looming. If you look at the system, first of all, the foundation of our manifesto stands on unity tiers. And you have security, you have unity, you have education, you have restructuring. With the current, first of all, I'm a farmer. So I've been a victim of my farm being kidnapped and asked for ransom. So those are some of the real issues that farmers face. But if you look at what my candidate is proffering, the solution the candidate is proffering, with security, you have the devolution of power restructuring he's proposing to do. With that space, you would be able to see rapid response in terms of security. Because locally on ground, you would be able to have security personnel that can easily and quickly mitigate issues as they arise. If you look at the plan, in depth, there's a plan to also be able to recruit more security personnel. And these personnel will not be coming from mass, they'll be coming from the community. So you will have a situation where you have real-time intel, you have real-time information of what is going on, and you will not rely on someone from Abuja or the city center to respond to a real-time threat in your community. And as a farmer, that gives you some sort of confidence, and that gives you some sort of succor to be able to go about your business. With the famine, for instance, you had, during the PDP years, we have the silos, which were all over the country, which also helps in providing market stability. You cannot run a government, or you cannot have effective agriculture without ensuring that people or the farmers are equipped with the right information, for instance, in education, to be able to make informed decisions. If you also look at what the past government has done, or the current government rather, you will see that there's no active participation or active solutions to these issues. So if farmers who are down up north, I have my grains in Niger, for instance. In Niger, I do grain farming, for instance, in Niger. You have the situation where late last year, when the rumors of wars in Ukraine came up, I, as a farmer, a private farmer, asked myself, what do I need to do? But with the government, there was nothing. There was no solution. There was no option of what to do. It was left open, up-ended. We have our fertilizers, which are coming from Ukraine and Russia. There was no cushioning. There was no solutions or options for farmers to be able to even feel, some sort of relief. And then, thirdly, I would like to speak to the issue of grazing, open grazing versus ranching. My co-panelist here spoke about countries who are doing beef in, making a lot of turnover. You cannot be able to achieve that if you do not come under the ranching space, which would now give some boost or strategic lifting to the space of value chain. If you do not ranch, then you cannot have from tannery to veterinary services and all of that. It will give the farmers some sort of boost to be able to go about their business, and then give them some sort of funding to be able to do good turnover. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so let me take you on this because it's quite interesting that you are a farmer as well. So he who wears the shoes, they say, knows exactly where it pinches. You do grain farming. There are many other farmers who do other kinds of farming and all that. So tell us exactly what challenges that you face in that sector that you think if it is addressed pointedly, then Nigeria may well become, a hub in agriculture where everyone can actually leverage in. And I'm asking this because even the government of the day has said there's Anchor Borrowers, a program which farmers benefited immensely from. So how did that help your sector?
So I applied for Anchor Borrowers. I never got any funding from that, so I'm not sure how many people within my cluster of farmers. I know a good number of us, we did not receive that. So maybe people that have received that can speak to that and speak to the process. However, one of the key issues for me I see that would be, in the long term, will keep being an issue for us will be irrigation. Irrigation, I believe that if that problem is being tackled properly, and that's one of the key things that the candidate is looking at addressing. If you have proper irrigation services, what that will do is that to give the farmers an opportunity to do all year round farming. And what that will do is that to reduce the dependence of importation in terms of agricultural products. It will also boost the farmer in terms of ability to be able to do quick turnovers. Infrastructure, for instance, you look at road, I'm very happy you spoke about road. You look at the road infrastructure, you look at electricity and power, what that will do to you in terms of storage, in terms of preservation of your product. And of course, the value chain also comes into that space because once you have the great network, which our candidate has proposed $120 billion in terms of infrastructure, which the farmers will be very key in tapping into this, offering or into this bucket that he's proposing. So I believe that from irrigation to infrastructure, if that is being sorted, then we would be able to have some sort of succor that would help us to carry on our business as farmers effectively.
Do you have an idea why you didn't get that Anchor Borrowers fund?
Well, as usual,
was there
there's
any
no feedback.
explanation? Was there any explanation as to that?
No feedback. You just go radio silent and you keep trying to.
Are you sure you followed the process? Are you
Absolutely, absolutely. As a cluster, we did.
So, Redson, you're also a farmer, right? I believe, or you understand the inroads of agriculture. And she's talked about the Anchor Borrowers program. Are you aware about that? And do you think that could be challenging for farmers not to have access to such?
Like I said earlier, access to funding is an issue for farmers generally. But if there's anything the Buhari government did really well, is supporting smallholder farmers across the country. I've come to this studio before and said, because I run a farm estate, where more than 300 Nigerians are employed. And yes, MBS have never come to the farm to take this data of my farmers. But I'm a beneficiary of the CBN Commercial Agri-Credit Scheme. And more than 700 of farmers around us got the Anchor Borrowers program in Nasarawa State. What we did was simply to follow up, ensure that there was proper documentation, and then also ensure that there was available land. Because one of the challenges that these programs have is you can go to the CBN or go to any agency of government and say you are interested in facility, and then you don't have the required capacity. Most of the time you don't get it. Yes, there are challenges of the fact that, I said that earlier, that most of these funds are domiciled with the commercial bank. So the processes of assessing them can be quite tedious if you're not following up. The same thing with the federal government agricultural warehouses across the country. It took a while before I got used to the process of assessing machineries. And once I did, more than 1,000 farmers in Nasarawa State got access to small machineries, the small handheld tractors and the rest. Now the thing is this, we in this country we have a challenge of expecting that we can achieve everything at once. One of the challenges of agriculture, and I actually ran a crowdfunding platform, and it was a mess. It was a mess because initially when we came in, we expected that no, you can make $1 billion from agriculture in a year if you have good money. But we did not look at the fact that agriculture requires patient investment and overtime. And so what needs to happen, which is one of the things that when I talk about the Agbado economy, which one of the things that I saw you speaking to is that you need to look at the foundation of agriculture and make changes to the foundation. Don't come and make changes at the top. What are the foundation? We talked about infrastructure earlier. Ensure there is easy access to majority of rural Nigeria so Nigerian farmers can have access to market. That's number one. Number two, funding. Then number three, like you talked about irrigation, yes. But you see, have we maximized farming even during the rainy season to even begin to talk about irrigation? Yes, irrigation supplements what you're doing. So maximize the capacity you have as a people. And then once you're able to maximize that, you cannot think about increased productivity. What am I talking about? You know, there is a difference between micro development and micro technology and macro technology. You know, if you look at technology coming from the West, the big tractors, the big combine harvesters and so on and so forth, they are good for development. But why don't you look at the model that has worked and has become very productive in most of Asia? You look at Thailand, you look at Taiwan. Thailand particularly because we import a lot of rice from Thailand. And if you go to Thailand, what you see in Thailand is where almost every rural community is literally independent productive centers, where you have Okada, the same Okada you see here, are used as tractors, oxen, and so many basic tools that can support rural Nigeria. Because if you want to give them all of the sophisticated technology, you will not be able to assess them, and then you cannot give them what they need. And so the Asuwaji Manifesto is talking to the fact that once we are able to make these changes, then you can improve on what you have had. Like I said, is it Eldorado? Not at all. But while there are challenges, as a farmer, I've often said that a different approach, a more realistic approach, a more long-term approach will ensure that over time we're able to reap the benefits of agriculture. Holland did not get to where they are today because they rushed the process. And yes, we have the APC as well as Buhari has given a lot of credit to Akiwumi, the current chairman of the Africa Development Bank, I think.
AFDB.
Now, some of the foundation he built, of course you have to build on that and then make them better. And so from the Awolowo era of cooperative farming, if you remember, came the Anchor Borrowers Program. So what are you going to do now is to take the Anchor Borrowers Program to the next level. And what is the next level of the Anchor Borrowers Program? Ensure that there is easy access to funding by rural Nigeria, because that is where the funding lies. Yes, we can also say that there's a lot of Abuja farmers are getting a lot of funding, while the rural farmers are not getting funding. So create a database structure where the rural farmers have, the rural farmers, they have access to government, they have access to warehouses and support structure at the state level, and then support based on what you have. That database is already being generated as we speak, so that rural farmers who have said, yes, we don't have access to funding, you can actually bring them into the fold.
So let me ask you this, Mr. Tedeke, because when you're talking this, it really pricks my heart. We're talking about easy access to funding. So why would a government, or why should a government, we're talking about rural farmers, yes. For instance, the smallholder farmers, they are in rural communities. They are the ones that feed the nation, that produce what the majority of Nigerians eat. So why would it be difficult for them, many of them who are not even educated, to access funds that are meant to them? For them, rather.
I would say clearly, it's a dysfunction of the system. And it's not today, it's not yesterday, it's been a long time coming. Majority of government agencies that deal with farmers needs to understand their role. And yes, she spoke to the fact that, and I think you spoke to the fact that we should stop running agriculture from Abuja. We need to take them to the state and the local government level. Now, if you don't get them to the state and the local government level, you are going to have challenges. And that was why Asiwaju said clearly that we have to realign the Bank of Agriculture and make it rural, so that the access of the farmer doesn't have to come to Abuja to access government support. It doesn't even have to go to state capital to access government support. It needs to go to the base where the farmer is to access government support. And so those changes will have to be made. To the key agency of government that support funding for farmers. Now, but like I said earlier, the challenge has always been how you approach the issue. And I'm going to use the issue of ranching and open grazing to explain this. You know, when we talk about ranching, so many people are very ignorant of the topic. In America, in the United States today, you still have open range. Open range is the same thing as open normal grazing. This is open grazing. That's the same thing. But what happened in the US is the government ensured that land that are reserved for farmers to graze, you cannot go and build there. Today, with the corruption of the system, and like I said, it's across board, people build on land that are reserved for grazing. So you're not there going to have the challenge. Let me complete the statement. You're not there going to have the challenge. And you cannot ranch. Look, I'm the one they call the robo-headsman. You cannot ranch when you don't have the resources to support the farmer, the ranchers who are farmers, the herders who are farmers. It is very expensive to maintain cattle. On the average, a cow takes about 25 liters of water a day and about 25 kilograms of grass a day. Now, how do you want the rural farmer who is a herder to be able to have that resources? So what needs to change? What needs to change is what is done all over the world. I've often said that create a north-central corridor that during the dry season, the cattle will move. Like man moves, all of us are moving to Lagos. Why are we moving to Lagos? It's because Lagos have the economic capacity. Everybody feels that when you go to Lagos, you are going to have the benefit of what? Of a better life.
Grazing
When during the dry season, whether you like it or not, if you like charge, you know they change anything.
All right,
let me
come.
Because they will move.
We don't have enough time anymore. I just have to come in here. Sorry, let me. You've spoken about assets. Land is an asset and a factor to households. I mean, the Land Use Act 1978 needs to be amended clearly from what he's saying, because ownership of land is very rigorous in Nigeria. How do you hope to look at that? Because a lot of people who suffer that are usually women in subsistence farming.
Okay, so our candidate is hoping to work with governors in the restructuring plan to be able to give back the land to the people. So one of the key things is that most of them don't have their C of O's, the titling. You would be able to ensure that people have their C of O's, and when you have your titling, it can also help which you spoke about, is to access to financing. Even if you move the BOIs or the banks to the rural level, what they need to be able to access that funds is not really available to them. So if you have your CFO and your titling done properly, then you would be able to, you are moved a step closer to an easy access to your financing.
Okay, any other thing you want to tell Nigerians, because 2023 is just around the corner, and you think the government of APC hasn't gotten to agriculture to the level it should be. So what would your candidate be doing if he gets the power?
Our candidate has promised, especially even with women, you see I'm a woman and I'm a farmer, and he involves us in the policy creation of this document to be able to understand our pain points and to be able to give succor. He is a listening person. He would listen to us. He would be able to build policies together with people that would benefit the people. Policies would not be built outside of those people who are in those sectors. Additionally, to speaking to funding as well, we already have the 20 billion for SMEs dollars that he's proposing to make accessible. In our document, you'll see that there's a special place for women in agriculture, because we realize that women are the ones that are feeding the nation. You said it earlier. He would be able to give us buyback guarantees as smallholder farmers or as commercial farmers in the long run, to be able to give us the economic empowerment we need to be able to make things or turn things around.
And Mr. Tedeke here says that the Agbado economy would help your sector because you deal in grain. So let's see how it goes. Nigerians would have a choice to make 2023 going forward. What's important is to make agriculture viable so that even people who are seeking for jobs can, naturally go into it and be, comfortable. Thank you for making our time to be with us. Our guests have been Secretary of Agriculture and Commodities Directorate of the All Progressives Congress Presidential Campaign Council, Retsin Tedeke, who incidentally is also a farmer. Thank you.